Good morning, everybody. My name is Miguel.
And I'm Renee, and we're your hosts. Welcome to Signals in the Noise, daily insights into trends in Florida's narrative landscape.
Signals in the Noise takes a look at news articles, social media content, and other platforms to identify conversations, messages, and stories that reinforce ideas, beliefs, and values that we interact with every day. This allows us to identify the shape and color of how meaning is made in the landscape in which we're all organizing and communicating in. That is what we call monitoring the narrative weather. And we're your resident meteorologist taking and tracking all of it.
Each morning, we'll take you through the latest, where we cover stories of importance. Then we'll move on to Hot Takes, where we look at viral content, and we'll wrap things up with On the Radar, a segment where we talk about real time stories that we're tracking.
Also, our co-host EVA is still out, but don't worry, she's going to be back with us real soon. Until then, it's going to be Renee and I guiding you through today's narrative landscape. Also, Renee, I don't know if you noticed anything new with my camera today.
I know we had some technical difficulties this morning, but I'm glad we were able to push through.
Yeah, I mean, that's the nature of live broadcast. With that, let's get right into our first segment, the latest.
Laura Lee, Florida's top election official and Secretary of State, is facing accusations of voter suppression after informing election officials of two last-minute moves on purging voter rolls of returning citizens who owe court fees and ballot box surveillance, as early and post-person voting kicked off last week. Our coverage on the story can be found in our episode of Signals in the Noise from October 19th.
These tactics are part of the state's routine attempt to confuse voters. Honestly, I should probably add voter suppression to the list of things that I'm yelling lately, because that's exactly what this is.
Facts.
The U.S. Elections Project estimates that over 5 million Floridians have casted their votes, whether through voting by mail or early and in person.
Okay, so Floridians are clearly not playing this election. What we
Mm.
really want to say is that none of this is coincidental. We know Florida is a battleground state. We know that both candidates are neck and neck in the polls. We know that Lee was appointed by Governor DeSantis, who we also know is a close ally of Trump. And we know that Trump has said that he would blame DeSantis if he loses the state of Florida. So it's really no wonder that the Florida GOP are working overtime to ensure that they win.
Yeah, Florida's GOP is stoking fear to ensure that some voters, especially returning citizens with former felonies, are too afraid to vote. But the numbers paint a different picture altogether. Floridians are showing up to vote in what could be the most important election of our lifetimes, so that they can participate in swearing in a government that is truly by and for the people. We saw a glimpse of that people power during this weekend's March to the Polls.
Yep. The March to the Polls rallies on October 24th, hosted by the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition and Florida for All, stood up against the poll tax that's being imposed against returning citizens, even after they were granted the right to vote in 2018 with the overwhelming passage of Amendment 4.
Wait, so DeSantis and his people are just going to ignore the overwhelming passage of Amendment 4?
Child, I just don't understand. I really don't.
Yeah. On Twitter, accounts that have uplifted the March to the Polls are media personality Super Cindy, racial justice lawyer Judith Brown Dianis, activist Angel Sanchez, and fund Janae Nelson. The hashtag Free the Vote has over 3,000 posts on Instagram, with the top posts coming in from Miami singer Lauren Jaragui, who performed at Orlando's March to the Polls rally. On Twitter, in the last 90 days, mention of the March to the Polls reached over 19,000 tweets. So, content in July focused on the attacks on votes by mail by the president and then ensuring that voters would show up to the polls by any means necessary. Content then in August focused on the March on Washington and its subsequent 57th anniversary march. And then content from September onwards covered the March to the Polls rally. Did you get that timeline, Renee?
I got it. So all of October, leading up to March to the Polls, Desmond Meade, Executive Director of FRRC, has appeared on Zerlina on Peacock, Axios, Levi's, and NPR to talk about voting rights for returning citizens. And as early voting kicked off, Lyft and Free America have partnered up to offer free rides to the polls for formerly incarcerated voters, which is available until November 3rd in a range of cities and states, including all of Florida.
Yo, that's a dope promo.
It is, right? All of this happened while white supremacists threatened both Meade and FRRC, believing that they're working to undermine the president's reelection. And the Florida GOP requested that the FBI conduct an investigation into FRRC's fines and fees program. The movement to re-enfranchise returning citizens is growing, and both the GOP and nefarious actors are aware of increased voting rights as a threat to the status quo. Because of Florida's role as a Southern battleground state and their perpetual attacks against key civil rights policies like the Voting Rights Act, these examples are part of the state's racist underbelly that protects and enforces its legacy from slavery to segregation and to mass incarceration.
All of this just feels underhanded and honestly just makes me cringe.
Miguel, I really would be worried if it didn't.
We know restoring voting rights has the potential to shift the balance of political power in the state. Those who have been deeply impacted by mass incarceration, which is partially responsible for widespread voter disenfranchisement, could have the ability to have their voices heard both at the ballot box and beyond. With stories of voter intimidation and state-sanctioned voter suppression, March to the Polls was a show of community-oriented solidarity and unity, and underneath it, the belief that we have each other's backs because we count on us. This is a great example of narrative in action because it tapped into a greater belief that Floridians have, which is rooted in the idea that in order for democracy to work, it has to include all of us. Because it is a part of a long-term and focused work of FFRC in the state, we're seeing the results of tenacious organizing and the connection to larger stories around criminal justice reform across the country.
Mm-hmm. It's moving that folks were able to show up in this way, and I'm sure it might be easy because this is such a high-stress election season, and honestly, a high-stress year. We need a little bit of joy wherever we can get it, and that's why I binge watch Girlfriends on Netflix. We also know that March to the Polls won't be the end of the push to advocate for the rights of returning citizens. Today, the nonpartisan group National Coalition on Black Civic Participation is hosting Returning Citizens Vote Day. Tomorrow, the National Urban League will be hosting a Facebook Live conversation with Desmond Meade on expanding voting rights.
That sounds really dope.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the Black Voters Matter hashtag is popular on both Twitter and Instagram with 14,000 posts on both platforms. And while the hashtag Black Votes Matter has only 5,000 tweets, on Instagram it has over 47,000 posts. Conversations using both hashtags will likely continue on until November 3rd, and anybody who wants to add to this conversation can use these hashtags to lift their messages to a wider audience on either platform. With that, let's move on to our next segment, Hot Takes. Since the initial conversation on DeSantis' anti-protest bill last month, there hasn't been much chatter on stop. We expect this will change, though. On October 24th, the Tampa Bay Times announced that no charges will be filed in the case of a driver hitting a protester during a June demonstration in Hyde Park Village. Despite there being video evidence, the state attorney declared under Florida law, crimes like aggravated battery, identifying the registered owner, is not the same as identifying the person behind the wheel. The survivor, Jay Passmore, who is both an organizer and a National Guard veteran, told reporters that she was disappointed but not surprised with the outcome of this investigation.
Miguel, this is the story of being Black in America. We really stayed disappointed but not surprised when people in power look the other way. The fight for our lives really shouldn't be up for debate.
Mm-hmm.
On October 24th, the Tallahassee Democrat reported on the virtual press conference against DeSantis' anti-protest bill. The Tallahassee Community Action Committee and Students for a Democratic Society called the bill vicious rhetoric that aims to legitimize police attacks and intimidate anti-racism and Black Lives Matter organizers in Florida.
The Tallahassee Democrats' Facebook post on the story was met with varying opinions and beliefs in their comment section. Much of the comments engaged in debate about peaceful protests versus violent looting, citing that the bill wouldn't impact peaceful protesters, which we know isn't true, especially as the right continues to attack social movements by instigating debates about what they deem peaceful. What we do know is that the way the bill is written is up for interpretation, which makes it all the more dangerous. The Stop bill is responding to the right's crackdown on any form of protest, period. DeSantis is not looking to solve the problem of racialized violence by the police. The bill is nothing more than an opportunistic attempt to shut down legally protected free speech that is critical of the governor and his handling of police violence against the Black community. The Organization for World Peace penned an opinion piece citing the hypocrisy in DeSantis' policy proposal. In it, they uplift the idea and belief that in order to end the violence that emerges as a result of police brutality that people of color face every day, the answer is not to regulate citizens' behaviors, especially if they decide to enact their constitutional right of free speech through protest. Because policing has demonstrated as an institution that reform will not solve the underlying historical racism, the only way to stop the violence is to defund the police.
Miguel, please do not let the All Lives Matter and the Back the Blue crowd hear about this one.
I said what I said.
Surprising no one, the Back the Blue crowd still remains on DeSantis' side on this proposal. I'm sure those are the same folks who ranked DeSantis as the 6th best governor, stemming from a popular post about the governor on WFLA News Channel 8.
I'm sorry, Renee, did you just say the 6th best?
I thought it was a joke too until I saw it was by the American Legislative Exchange Council, otherwise known as the conservative group ALEC. That same story is found on multiple pages on Facebook too. Strange.
It's by ALEC. That makes more sense now. Even with the deaths of tens of thousands of Floridians, we can rely on DeSantis' bigoted policies like STOP to rally his supporters and folks on the conservative ideological spectrum. With this, let's move on into our last segment, On the Radar.
The vice president rallied in Tallahassee this past weekend as news broke revealing some of his closest staffers were diagnosed with coronavirus. We'll continue monitoring how this story impacts the conversation around elections, rallies, and coronavirus.
Also, a popular Facebook post by WPTV covered an anti-mask rally in Delray Beach, calling the Palm Beach County's mask mandate medical tyranny.
Yikes.
A piece in the Orlando Sentinel discussed the pandemic infodemic and how misconceptions about the coronavirus are common among transporters, but the overall distrust of vaccines that leads to conspiratorial thinking is actually bipartisan. We'll be tracking down any other anti-mask and reopening rallies in the coming days in parts of Florida.
I don't know what's up with Palm Beach, but have these people not seen the news in the last 8 months? Wear your masks, people. Please wear your masks. It's really, really not that hard.
Not at all.
As stories about Hendry County emerge, we'll continue tracking stories and conversations on the role of rural communities in the election, especially those that challenge the narratives around change in local politics as it relates to towns and counties with low voter turnouts.
Yo, there are 8 days left in this election season. Sorry. I can't believe how the days are just flying by.
Look, honestly, the Rona has messed with my perception of time because 8 days feels like 8 months sometimes. All I know is it's about to get really, really, really real.
For real.
Oh, Lord. Well, that's all for us this morning. Thank you so much for tuning into Signals in the Noise. We look forward to seeing y'all tomorrow. Bye.
See ya.
Perfect.